The COVID-19 pandemic cast a long shadow in countries across the world and has quickly moved beyond a health crisis alone. We can look at these impacts in three different streams. The first stream is that of the virus itself. Despite low infection rates in children, the impacts can be deeply felt. The second stream is the containment measures, such as school closures and confinement. While these interventions reduce the speed of the infection rates, they have severe impacts on children in terms of loss of education, lost incomes, and psychological trauma. The third stream, and the main focus of this video, is the larger social-economic crisis generated by the containment measures. A crisis that will push millions of children and their families back into poverty. A crisis that will affect countries far into the future, even after the end of the lockdowns. This will have the worst impact on children when we look at the number of affected children, its duration, and its severity. Without the right vision, the right planning, and the right investments, the future could be bleak for millions of children. Let's look into the details of this crisis, which is about to engulf the whole world. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and let us know what you think in the comments. In East Asia and Pacific, many governments have implemented strong policies to contain the spread of the disease and COVID-related deaths. Infections have remained low in comparison to many developed countries, but the impact of those interventions are being felt across the region in a profound way. Children today are vulnerable. Many are out of school, more vulnerable to abuse both on and offline, lacking access to a healthy diet to help them grow. Many families have been living with 1.5 months savings under their mattress. In a protracted socio-economic crisis like this means that without work they are a few days away from struggling to bring food to the table and cover the basic needs of their children. It means they will start selling belongings and could even resort to more desperate measures without government support. As the world's attempt was to flatten the curve of the virus, it is now equally important to flatten the curve of the socio-economic impact on children and their families, a curve with a higher deadly potential for children and their families. Shutdowns cause a daisy chain of lost incomes. If a factory worker loses their job, they will not buy food from a street vendor, who will then be unable to afford to buy their ingredients from the market, and the market seller will have little or no money to buy produce from the farmer. They will all struggle to provide for their children. The result is an expected dramatic, fast, and prolonged increase in child poverty in the region. For children who were already poor and vulnerable, the situation is worsening. Those who had managed to emerge from poverty are falling back. There will be children who never experienced poverty before, now falling into poverty. Most of these families are not covered by any existing social welfare support, and in many cases do not have any kind of job and salary protection. This is likely to be the biggest and most dangerous COVID-related impact for children. While infection rates of children in the region were in the thousands, it is estimated that the number of children falling into poverty will be in the millions. To flatten this curve of the socio-economic impact on children and their families, there is a blueprint for action that can help children survive today, and also allow them to thrive and shape a better future for themselves and their countries. Financial systems can contribute to economic development by providing people with useful tools for risk management. But when they fail to manage the risks they retain, they can create severe financial crises with devastating social and economic effects. The financial crisis that hit the world economy in 2008 to 2009 has transformed the lives of many individuals and families, even in advanced countries, where millions of people fell, or are at risk of falling, into poverty and exclusion. For most regions and income groups in developing countries, progress to meet the Millennium Development Goals by 2015 has slowed, and income distribution has worsened for a number of countries. Countries hardest hit by the crisis lost more than a decade of economic time. As the efforts to strengthen the financial systems and improve the resilience of the global financial system continue around the world, the challenge for policymakers is to incorporate the lessons from the failures to take into consideration the complex linkages between financial, fiscal, real, and social risks and ensure effective risk management at all levels of society. The recent experience underscores the importance of systematic, proactive, and integrated risk management by individuals, societies, and governments to prepare for adverse consequences of financial shocks. Mainstreaming proactive risk management into development agendas. Establishing contingency planning mechanisms to avoid unintended economic and social consequences of crisis management policies, and building a better capacity to analyze complex linkages and feedback loops between financial, sovereign, real, and social risks. Maintaining fiscal room and creating well-designed social protection policies that target the vulnerable while ensuring fiscal sustainability. The world economy continues to suffer from a series of destabilizing shocks. After more than 2 years of pandemic, the Russian Federation's invasion of Ukraine and its global effects on commodity markets, supply chains, inflation, and financial conditions have steepened the slowdown in global growth. In particular, the war in Ukraine is leading to soaring prices and volatility in energy markets, with improvements in activity in energy exporters more than offset by headwinds to activity in most other economies. The invasion of Ukraine has also led to a significant increase in agricultural commodity prices, which is exacerbating food insecurity and extreme poverty in many emerging markets and developing economies. Numerous risks could further derail what is now a precarious recovery. Among them is, in particular, the possibility of stubbornly high global inflation accompanied by tepid growth, reminiscent of the stagflation of the 1970s. This could eventually result in a sharp tightening of monetary policy in advanced economies to rein in inflation, lead to surging borrowing costs, and possibly culminate in financial stress in some emerging markets and developing economies. A forceful and wide-ranging policy response is required by policymakers in these economies and the global community to boost growth, bolster macroeconomic frameworks, reduce financial vulnerabilities, provide support to vulnerable population groups, and attenuate the long-term impacts of the global shocks of recent years. All evidence suggests that this crisis is going to drag on, with significant risks to both mounting rates of poverty and inequality between and within countries. Without a daring vision, we not only risk losing the hard-won developmental gains in recent years in the region, we risk losing a generation of future thinkers, leaders, workers, and consumers. Without the right investments from governments, the shadow of COVID-19 may hang over children and young people for a generation or more. This is the time to be bold, with new, creative ideas that will help children flourish and in turn support the economies of their countries. The global crisis unleashed by the COVID-19 pandemic has made clear the fundamental role that stronger, universal, integrated, and accessible social services, social welfare, education, health, early childhood development play in protecting children and their caregivers from the negative effects of all sorts of crises. Cash transfers alone are not enough, and I need solid, accessible, and affordable social services. We would love to hear any suggestions you have regarding how to manage these crises. Leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.